First of all, I want to say welcome, everyone. I have a feeling more people will come a little bit later or throughout the program. We are keeping everyone muted for this webinar. And as I wrote in the chat, if you have questions anytime, just put it in the chat. And, the second half of this, I'll do my best to answer questions. Have a couple things. Number one, I really appreciate your time here today. My goal is to bring value to you. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here to offer my experiences and talk about what I'm passionate about. And I hope you leave with some value, some bit of motivation, or something that just adds to your perspective. That is my goal here. Number two, I'm a board certified and trained anesthesiologist. I've put many people to sleep. That is not my goal today. So I hope everyone has enough engaging discussion or conversation from me to keep you awake, alert, and hopefully motivated. And then number three, this is a webinar about an hour long. The first half, I plan on speaking and sharing experiences, again, hopefully bringing value. The second half will be kind of a Q&A where I'm reading off questions and answering them for you. Hopefully, whatever I end up answering can be helpful to everyone out there. So I'll just go ahead and get started. This is a topic that I've spoken about privately or with small groups. I've never done it with a kind of a larger group in a webinar, but it's something I've been working on and talking about for so long for myself and for some others. And so I'm very passionate about it. One way I wanted to start this out was bring up a few, technically they're fictional scenarios, but realistically, I'm a magnet for these kinds of conversations that we'll be talking about today. So even though they're fictional, these are conversations I've had with many people, fortunately around the world, because there's a lot of people who reach out and want to have various discussions, whether you're a medical student, a physician, someone in the healthcare field, or even I think we have some non-healthcare people joining today. The good news is I think this is pertinent for everyone, but this will definitely be more of an angle from a physician perspective. So number one, I'm going to start with a scenario here. So there's an interventional cardiologist, someone who's been practicing for 15 years. She's a mom with two young kids. She has a great reputation as a physician. She's known for her bedside manner. She's known for being efficient. She's known for being smart. Very proud of herself. Lately she's been watching, a lot of social media, Reels, TikTok, been seeing a lot of media interviews, reality TV. That probably describes many of us. And she's been quite tempted lately to think about and dream a little bit about her being on one of these interviews. She's a proud cardiologist. She's saved many lives. She's a parent. She's a daughter of someone, and she's does a lot of other things in her personal life. But she's like, how come I can't, have something interesting to say? That would be really cool if I could do that. So she has some of those thoughts. She is also well known in her hospital from a patient referral basis. There's people who've heard about her in different parts of her state and refer her. She's not really interested in necessarily getting more patients. She's actually really busy, but she is proud. And she's like, I wonder if I could get my name out there in some way where people know about me outside of my state. She also wants to start thinking about, hey, I've been practicing for 15 years and my kids are getting older. How do I give them a little more time? Being a full-time cardiologist, being a parent and a human, it's just a really busy time. So how do I continue serving patients like I've been doing and having a little more time for things I'm probably going to start liking more, including more time with my kids? But at the same time, I've worked very hard. I've gotten a lot more experience. I don't want to decrease my income. In fact, I'm trying to figure out, are there ways for me to continue seeing my patients, have more time for life, and then potentially get maybe some higher income from somewhere else or somewhere where I can match it? Because that's what a lot of other people in different fields tend to do. She also has this aspiration, and it just, she's been seeing some authors lately on social media. Maybe I can write a book. Her being a cardiologist, she feels like she's a great heart doctor. She has a lot of things to talk about heart health. She feels like being a mom and also being a full-time cardiologist. And when I say mom, I say that's respectively where moms have different expectations from the spouse in this scenario and from her kids. And she feels like she's balancing it well. So she actually wants to talk to other moms, parents, cardiologists, physicians in general. She has a lot to share. And she feels like if she were to write a book one day, that would be incredible. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two, medical student, fourth year, just matches in orthopedic surgery. Awesome, been working really hard on that. During the process of medical school, some of his friends dropped out of med school. They got in, took it for a year or two, and said, this isn't for me, but hey, listen, I've already been talking with some people, and they went into consulting. Another one went to some pharma pathway. So, still in touch with those folks. They're doing well and very exciting and kind of planting a seed of doing different things. Well, even though he just matched orthopedic surgery, there's another friend who said, hey, I'm not actually going for residency. I'm going to finish my medical school, and I already got a job in some venture capital firm. And so I'm going to do that. They actually want some healthcare people. I'm going to do that. Well, before this happened to some of his friends, he's already had an aspect of, I actually have interest in investing in finance. And actually, after watching some of these movies and knowing these technology companies, he really wants to be part of a startup somewhere in his journey. He's very realistic that he's going to work his tail off in orthopedic residency as well as a career, but he already knows that he wants that. You know, and we'll get into my story here soon, but my bucket was I wanted to be a physician. And I thought that was going to be the whole bucket. This young med student already knows that being an orthopedic surgeon is aspirational and he's going to get it now. But it's not going to be a big part of, it's not going to be the whole bucket for his life. He already knows that. So he's now curious and interested in learning different skill sets to support different buckets in the future. Scenario number three, a family practitioner has been working for 10 years. He's very fulfilled, has a great patient base in a smaller community. He's a sole income earner for his household. And lately, he's been a bit more curious about other things. He's on a Facebook group called Physician Dads Group, which really exists. That's not hypothetical. And he sees other specialists, being a family physician, he sees other specialists, maybe with some different lifestyles, maybe with some different levels of income, and sees them travel a lot, sees them golf a lot, and recently has gone in some real estate investing. He's doing pretty well. He actually believes that can help balance some things out long term. Maybe when he feels like he's going to get burned out, because he sees a lot of colleagues burned out. He's not burned out yet, but he's thinking ahead. And then he recently saw some real estate investors raise money from other investors. So now they're making money on their real estate investment from their own money, but also making money off of other people investing in these real estate deals. So it really accelerates the amount of revenue that he can achieve. Now, in his mind, he's thinking, I am a busy full-time family practitioner, a stable job, which I need for my family. I have some of these investments. How do I start letting people know that I want investors? How do I start kind of networking and getting in there? And he's starting to do that in this Facebook group, but he's just trying to think of some strategies and ways to accelerate that. And so those are three, again, hypothetical scenarios, but they're real. And I can't see anyone right now. Some people might be nodding. I might have touched a reality in some of you. And again, there are a lot of physicians on here. There's medical students, and then there's probably non-physicians on here. I think this actually applies to many people going deep into a career. So I compare physicians going very deep, becoming an authority and expert in their domain, and having certain feelings about looking elsewhere. Like, do you need to be an expert to go left or right, to go somewhere different? Why do I need to do that? I worked really hard to be here. I think that can be very frustrating for a physician. But I think this applies to many people. Curiosity and what can I be working on myself that potentially can open up doors. I do want to share a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to go into kind of defining thought leadership and what I think it is, and then go a little bit deeper into my experiences and what I think they can do for you. And for a few, folks who came late, I want to say My goal is to bring some value to you so you leave thinking about something new or some little boost of motivation or inspiration. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm passionate about this. I spend a lot of time doing this for myself, and I end up talking even to my kids about this stuff. That's how important it is to me. So I just wanted to let you all know. So I grew up here in Columbus, Ohio, and I don't have any physicians in my family, but it was a dream. It was a dream to be a doctor. And I worked really hard, like many people work hard. I'm married to a physician, and if she was here, she'd be laughing. But when we compare notes on how much we studied in medical school, and I didn't meet her during medical school, she says, she studied a few hours, went home, and she did very well. That was not me. I was the person who went to the library before, exams, studied for 10, 12 hours in the library, of course, messing around and working out and doing, silly stuff. But I spent the whole day at the library. And I got by, but I wasn't this like high honor student. So I say that because I worked really hard to get to every step of the way. And so when I trained in anesthesiology in Chicago for 4 years, and I landed this first and actually only anesthesia job here in Columbus as in a private practice, that was the dream. I got the dream. I dreamed about it and I got it. And it's not easy to accomplish that, but I was very proud. And so I say all that because to be disappointed years later in the sense of my own fulfillment, I think it's a beautiful field. I think it's a beautiful industry. I really do. And I think there's a lot of people that love it, and I think they should. But for me, there's a lot of changes that happened where I felt like that bucket was not filled. It was full for a while, and then it really started decreasing. And that was very frustrating. And this whole story that I ended up writing a book called Physician Underdog because I felt like an underdog. I did everything right. I studied hard. I went into a field that was credible, well paying, everything. But yet I was at work one day in the operating room thinking, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? But oh my God, I committed all this time and work and mindset. My parents helped me, this would be crazy to not even consider it. I think nowadays we're talking a little bit more openly about it. Burnout's a real thing, it's a common thing. Well, I think it was always real, but it wasn't spoken about. And so I just feel like when I was undergoing it, and this was probably 2015, 16, it was very frustrating. So I was extremely disappointed. I'll come back to my story, but I do want to talk a little bit about thought leadership. This is the name of the webinar. First of all, I came out saying I'm going to do this webinar on thought leadership. A couple of my close friends who are physicians goes, "Hey, listen, what exactly is that?" And this is from a few people who have built businesses, invested, been around. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm just making assumptions here." So number one, if you don't know what thought leadership is, I'm about to tell you my perspective of it. You can also look up definitions of it. I think it's important to understand why I'm talking about this because I think of it as a holistic thing. Sometimes if you mention thought leadership, say, "Oh, I should be posting on social media." Some people say, "I should just be building a website." I think it's a holistic philosophy in the same track of we went to medicine, we got degrees, we built credibility, we worked hard, we're now an expert, we built hopefully a good reputation taking care of patients. For me, thought leadership is a continuation of that. So we could break down potential barriers that we might not know exist today for ourselves. We could get more referral base for our patients if that's what we're looking for. We could get onto stages that we've dreamed of. Okay. And I wrote this post today on LinkedIn, and I'm going to read it because in the mornings I'm actually pretty clear. Like I read a lot, I write a lot, and today I was kind of proud of the thought leadership definition. And so I'm going to read it because at this time of the day, I cannot think of a better way. So, thought leadership, getting our story, our work, our thoughts, and building a reputation greater than the people we work with or the people we directly serve. Another way to look at it, to be recognized as an authority, as the human we are, as the unique perspective that can help others grow or be inspired or be entertained while opening up opportunities and broadening our reach. I also want to say, from a physician perspective, we worked really hard to be this expert. And say you have a great reputation in your hospital system and in your community. But why stop there? Like, what do you need to do to broaden that? And I talk to a lot of physicians who say, gosh, I just wish I could be on stages talking to other orthopedic surgeons or other cardiologists or other family practitioners who could use and hear my experience. How do I continue that? Or I want to go across the world and be known as a kind of global person because I've worked so hard to be here. Just because I'm in a small town, why can I not access those stages over there? And so I just feel like I have a lot of conversations with physicians and medical students about thought leadership, and I thought today I would share some of these things. So I'm going to go a little bit into my story, and then in about 10 minutes, we'll probably get to the Q&A. So if anyone already has some questions, please start typing in whenever you want in the chat, and eventually I'll get to them. So I told you that I trained in anesthesiology and I moved to Columbus, Ohio to join a private practice. I ended up staying there for about 13 years. I was medical director for 7 years. And, I told you I worked really hard to get into med school. It wasn't, one of those things that was necessarily easier for me. And I think after I was board certified in a couple of years of the learning curve of learning everyone, being okay, practicing myself, I started to get a little bored. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think that's unusual. In fact, I think it's aspirational. I think, especially from a physician aspect, a little bit of boredom, or at least in anesthesiology, is a good thing. People are doing well, stress is a little bit lower, things are good. The problem is it's boring. Boring is boring. And so at the age of 31, I started reading books because my parents told me growing up, read books. I was the person who said, no, I'm not going to read. I only read what I had to. So at the age of 31, I discovered books, fiction, nonfiction. I was so excited. I really ended up veering towards entrepreneurship. Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all these companies that we know, these brands, and reading behind the grind behind them and how they were falling down. They didn't necessarily know what they were doing initially. And I think from a physician mindset, it's radical. It's radical. You train hard and earn it and prove it, everything before you can really go out there. I can tell you, I feel like everywhere outside of medicine is the complete opposite. Or I would say the healthcare field. I think there's a lot of fake it till you make it. And once you understand that, I feel like the barrier gets a little bit lower. So I think it's important that happened to me. I started a first venture with two other close friends called Smile MD in 2014, mobile anesthesia company. Today it takes care of, proudly after 10 years, takes care of thousands of kids on Medicaid in 4 different states. What happened was by starting this company, it forced me personally, as well as my co-founders, to start communicating in different rooms. What do we do? Essentially sales, but at the same time, we needed investors. At the same time, we needed people to join the company. So I got used to, writing the story. Okay. I got used to selling. I got used to joining pitch competitions. So I was on stage talking about this company. I ended up doing some podcasts. What's a doc doing? An anesthesiologist starting a company in here. So I started doing that. And what I realized was I was getting feedback. Hey, that's really cool that you're doing it. Or that really resonated with me. I understand why you started it. And that, I think, was a positive reinforcement loop for me in my journey. And then a year later, I ended up starting an angel fund for investors. I was also investing. I started this company. Now I started an angel fund. I was all in. I was like a kid in a candy store. And that got me further into storytelling to potential investors to say, Navin, this is good stuff. I see that you're investing in it. I want in. And so it became very normal for me to take this, to shift the anesthesia mindset. Anesthesia was go in the operating room. The only person I'm talking to, I'm putting to sleep. Now I don't have anyone to talk to. And so now I'm like, okay, now in this world, I was talking to so many people. In fact, I had to talk a lot and sell to try to get investors, try to get people to join the companies, etc. Then I started posting a little bit on LinkedIn, and I was trying to look at exactly when I started posting. I think it was 2015, 16, 17. And I just started posting thoughts. And again, positive feedback kind of cycle where people would reach out and say, I really resonate with that. So for me, it's kind of become this natural and I would say slow process over the years where I was doing media, I was writing articles, I've been storytelling, I've been passionate about this. In fact, my wife's like, "You're not the same person anymore because you used to talk passionately about anesthesiology," which recently some of my colleagues in my residency reached out to me and they said, "You're the only person who was passionate about anesthesiology. No one else was passionate." But I think whatever I end up liking, I become passionate and I like to talk and storytell. And I will say by the end of 2019, I was burned out before I think it was a streamlined term. These two companies that we had started were really progressing, and I was ready to make a jump because I had a family, I had my anesthesia job, we had Offer Health, which is the healthcare company mobile services, and then we had Loud Capital, which is the venture capital firm that I do full time now. So by the end of 2019, I left my practice to run Loud Capital full time, which was a big shift. And I want to tell you a specific story that I think goes into thought leadership. And, you know, I want to say this is the route to how I wrote a book, but I'm not trying to encourage writing a book. I want to just explain and share the experience of the steps that led me to it. And so in basically October 2019, there was a very large medical publisher that reached out to me. It was an awesome email, a respectful publisher that I knew about med school books and stuff like that, that we knew the name. They reached out and they said, "Can you write a chapter, given your background and doing different things in venture and entrepreneurship? And we saw you on some themes and podcasts. Could you write a chapter for an anesthesiology book, but it'd be innovation in anesthesiology?" My gut reaction was, "That's really cool that I'm being asked, but I don't write, especially a chapter. That just sounds intimidating." I wasn't the type of person who wrote a bunch of journals or did a lot of research, so that was already intimidating to me. Number two, I said, "I'm kind of checked out of anesthesiology right now. And even though it's innovation, like I really don't want to go deep." They said, "You can write about whatever you want from your experience and perspective." So I said, "That's interesting." So I just started writing. I entertained it. I said, "Okay, let me try it." When they, gave me a little bit of room, I started writing in a Google document, just started writing. And I was basically writing about the story about starting Offer Health and mobile anesthesia and how we can bring more access to anesthesia. That was going to be my big innovation. So I started writing about it, and I really enjoyed writing. And this was the first time I was kind of formally writing outside of some posts and a little bit of journaling for myself. And so I wrote and wrote and wrote. And I remember showing it to a couple of friends of mine who I felt like I respected, and they knew English way better than I did and they wrote pretty well. And they said, "Listen, man, you shouldn't mess with this. You should probably get an editor." And so, Brian's on here and he helped me get an editor, a contract editor who had edited chapters and books and stuff. And so that's a big piece, by the way, everyone. I never wrote really something formal like that, but it empowered me to write freely on this document. With an editor, they kind of helped, shape, okay, hey, maybe you should write a little bit more about this. Maybe we should just make this a little more in this direction. And then, of course, grammatical, etc. And I wrote the chapter. I submitted it to this medical publisher. Now the pandemic hits, and maybe May or June of 2020, I had already, put it on the platform. And I know the world is going crazy right now, including my own world. But I just checked in and said, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while." And they got back to me and they said, "I'm sorry, we actually haven't found other authors for the other chapters." And I said, "Okay, can you please communicate with me because I submitted it on time. I got an editor, I paid out of pocket. And I wasn't getting paid for this chapter. It was an honor to do it, but I kind of want a mutual respect as well." And so they got back to me and they said, "I'm sorry, but we did find some authors. We are pushing the launch date of this book." I said, "Okay, it's going to be a while. All right, that's fine." Waited more months and more months. They got back to me and they said, "Hey, listen, we're getting close here to the finish line, but we reviewed your chapter." And I forgot to say, by the way, the first time when I submitted it for the final time, they had already given me feedback, some red lines, some edits that weren't major, and it was still authentically me. I changed it and I submitted it, so it was already approved. They came back and they said, "We actually have some more thoughts. We feel like it should be more holistic, whatever, whatever." And they redlined basically, it felt like 80% was probably like 50% of my chapter. So now, and I checked, the timeline of all this. But this was basically a 2 year time horizon from when they first emailed me to now we're talking about redlining my original draft. In those 2 years, I kept posting on LinkedIn as an outlet. I really enjoyed it. I did some social media. I was already continuing to write, by the way. So writing the chapter itself was really therapeutic for me. I was doing it in the morning. I would write my thoughts again with the storytelling and things I was already talking about on podcasts. It was flowing, and I was never writing that much, but it kind of opened up this opened up this new outlet for me. So I was writing and writing and writing. I was continuing to post on LinkedIn, and I kind of had some aspirations where I told Brian, I want to write a book. I think, writing this chapter was actually really, I think I have a lot more to say. Because I was talking about my story, my mindset shift, what I feel like physicians can do, different perspectives, etc. So I end up emailing them back, and I want you to hear this email that I wrote. I was very proud when I wrote it, but I want you all to hear it because it was a proud moment, and I feel like everyone can relate either now or will relate at some point. Because I was really upset that they redlined most of it. All right, because that was the reason I wrote it and spent so much time. I said, thank you. I'm happy to jump on a call with you, but I created the chapter, got an editor, got good feedback from your team, and made my edits. I then submitted it on time and wasn't aware the other authors weren't found yet and that there was a large push in date. I understand many things were happening around the globe, but I put a lot of time into this piece. That being said, I feel this book may not be, or this chapter may not be, or yeah, sorry. That being said, I feel this book may not be the right fit for my chapter as is, as I can see the amount of changes needed, and I respectfully don't have more time to do this project for more changes. I really respect the publisher and its reach, but over the past 2 years, I've built a network and have been teaching VC and entrepreneurship to many medical students and practicing physicians around the world. I feel the chapter will be good for them to read, and I can put this in another medium that makes sense for me and also gets the content out efficiently instead of waiting a year to go out. I appreciate the opportunity to do this, but I don't think it's the right time for me. If you wanted to connect or have a conversation, I'm happy to do that. Thank you. I was very proud to write that. They responded with, "Okay, it looks like we don't have to don't have to jump on a call," so they didn't want to talk about it. But I was proud, and things had changed where I looked at this large publisher who I respect, publishing a book, which I don't even know how many people, in all seriousness, really read these medical books anymore. And so I said, I spent a lot of time on this chapter. So I ended up putting it in a free medical journal and it distributed a few months later, got great feedback, and I just felt good about it. And to me, that was building thought leadership throughout time where I built something and I was empowered. And I felt like, you know what? I don't need you. I don't need to write a free chapter for you, wait, and then go through your distribution channel. I'm just going to do it myself. And I was also confident enough where I didn't need to say I wrote for this large medical publisher. I say that because I'm very empowered, and I feel like if we really think about and continue to invest in ourselves, whether it's thought leadership, personal development, etc., we can all reach that point where we have an email like that, and for what initially seemed like such a big opportunity seemed like maybe not the best option for us. Eventually, that continued writing turned into this book. It took me another year and a half. I ended up self-publishing, and I'm wrapping up here probably about 5 more minutes, and then we'll go to kind of Q&A. I ended up, wanting to, who doesn't want a book that's published from a large publisher? So I spoke to a couple agents. They gave me feedback. One said, the book is a bit short. I would like to make it 30-40% longer. And I said, I wrote a lot of, like, from my heart. I wrote it, I don't want to extend it. So I said no to that. The other agent said, it's not salesy enough. They said, people want to know what to do next. And I said, that's fine. That's just not this book. This book is more, I want it to relate to people. I want it to inspire people, or I want it to plant some seeds. So whatever they do, they know they're not alone. Like, know you're not alone is really important to me. I think can be a lonely world. And I think I write and I talk and I share even today to know that there's frustrating things out there and we're not alone. We can do things together. And so I said no. So I ended up self-publishing on Amazon. It was a pain in the butt. And I had to find, an artist for the cover. I had to find. I'm honored to do it, but it was a lot of work. And I guess all I'm saying is the writing piece of my story was what I got to do. And then there's all these other services that I got to complement to make it happen. Because one of the first things people tell me is like, man, writing a book must be crazy hard. And I said, there's a lot of pieces, but you can complement those pieces. So I eventually published the book on Amazon. In doing so, I said, well, I don't have my own website. I'm going to be an author. And people said, you should probably just get a website. So did a website, started posting about the book, all these kinds of things. So today I have my own website, I have my own book, I do podcasts, I do a bunch of different things. It doesn't mean that everyone needs to do that to start building their kind of brand and thought leadership. But I just wanted to explain just from that one chapter to where this book is today. Throughout that journey, I just started adding bricks to, my fort, let's call it. And I feel like we all want a stronger and maybe bigger fort. I don't know if this is a good example. And there's different ways to do it. And so, last but not least, I think, you know, I'm really proud to say, like on LinkedIn, after posting for a while, I just hit 100,000, and what that means is, it's not easy to do. I've worked hard at it. It's not like X amount of followers means like a monetary value, but does it open doors? Absolutely. Do people reach out to me throughout the growth? Absolutely. There's opportunities now that are coming to me. There's potential media opportunities. There's a podcast I'll be doing, and I have an anchor sponsor that I'll be announcing soon that everyone on this call will know the company. And so there's a lot of great things happening. And so my goal is to continue talking about this and sharing these experiences, because some people listening right now or watching might want some of those things. And the way I look at it, there's things that I can tell my old self to accelerate it. Like if I'm talking to my old self right now on this webinar, I would say, hey, these are things you should start thinking about. Start thinking about building your brands, breaking down barriers, bringing opportunities for yourself, decreasing your time if you want to increase your time somewhere else. And thought leadership and building your brand and building your amplifying your credibility and reputation, even if it's not the medical degree or something specific, but it's a personal interest or a hobby. That's how I see the power of thought leadership. Um, I think I'm done right now. I went through all my notes, all my chicken scratch. And so if anyone has any questions or wants to ask anything, please type that in the chat, and happy to answer them. And actually, in that process, I also want to say there are a lot of people that reach out to me and they want to do various things. And I think thought leadership is a foundation for that. Some of them are, they want to be a public speaker, they want to do a podcast, they want to write a book, they want to they're an authority in their local community, but they want to have a farther reach. They want to be an advisor for a startup company or some company in general. They want to consult. They just want more business, or for their more patients for their business, or more clients for their business. They want to find new opportunities. They want to explore things. They want to have more options because they know that they can't work the way they're working today. They want to learn new skills. They want to meet new people, right? We say networking, but in the end, like, they want to meet people who can add value to their life and vice versa. And some people say they just want to have time to process, reflect, learn. And I think those are really important things. And that's just a quick list I made, but I have conversations almost daily with the gamut of people. Hopefully I can help in some ways. So in your opinion, what's the first step in taking that first step? It's a great question. I think the first step, I think hopefully you're taking home that the importance of amplifying your brand. And remember, when I say that, it doesn't mean I want everyone posting on social media, because I would say most people don't post on social media. Most people scroll through and look through things. But what is your goal? There's like really, really smart people on this call who want to do something. And the first step is to start working towards that. And sometimes that's just having a conversation with someone. Hopefully your first step is asking questions here, because I'll at least attempt to ask it. And if I can't answer it. Hopefully someone else sees it and lets you know. But I think asking people, or picking their brain on things, so for example, when it came to starting my first company, to start an LLC, I think these are things that you can just Google now, and there's plenty of services that do it. Back then I feel like it wasn't as common, or I just was out of the loop. So I just talked to an attorney friend of mine who happens to be in the circle of friends. I called him up and I said, hey, I just wanted to start a business. Like, how do I do this LLC thing? And they told me. So my first step was reaching out to someone who I feel would know something. And again, this sounds so elementary, but honestly, this is life. Elementary steps to make progress. So that would be my first step. I got another question. How would you recommend getting started? And I think ask people that you respect or feel like have a little bit of experience, and pick their brain. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. So number one, is it a first step towards something? I want to start a business. I want to start another stream of revenue for myself. I don't even know what I can do though. So one thing I've done is I've been talking to a bunch of different consultants who consult for all these corporations, tech companies, really cool companies, and say, hey, what exactly do you do, and what do you give, and what do you offer? And by the way, I also want to say we will be following up, like shooting out emails to whoever signed up with this. There'll be, I think, a recording of this webinar, and then there'll be some, I think, ways for you to respond and what's interesting to you. Like, we want to continue to be helpful. We meaning I represent so many people, and I like to talk, so I'll be probably doing more webinars. But I feel like we can give you information, and please feel free to let us know what else you want to learn, or ask questions on things I'm not answering right now. Um, Anyone else? I feel like getting started was a big one. And if anyone has a specific thing and one they want to get started with or on, I'm actually happy to answer that as well. Yeah, someone said specifically for Beyond Physician. So I know this email went out um, on behalf of Beyond Physician. And Beyond Physician is something I co founded 3 years ago for this purpose, which is, again, I'm a magnet for conversations where people are like, hey, I want to be an advisor for a company. Hey, I want to do this. And after a while, I just kept saying, sorry, I don't have anything. You should try this. You should try that. And I was getting a little frustrated even with myself because I wasn't being helpful. And so Beyond Physician, we started, and things are going to amplify and accelerate really on the Beyond Physician standpoint, because we've have a lot of big announcements coming up, which is partnering with large organizations where we can bring in opportunities for physicians. We'll be creating more courses to gain new skills, and then to open opportunities. And so there's, someone who messaged me who said I created a profile a while back, and I'm the first one to say, Beyond Physician, especially the last couple of years, was startup mode. It was figuring out a lot of different things. We had people make profiles, and there hadn't been that much activity. But what we realized is we can't go one physician at a time. We can't go one opportunity at a time. We need to go in masses. And the good news is those masses of physicians will be coming on, and the masses of opportunities is what we're working on. But it's really chicken and egg. So when we go to companies and corporations who've been asking for physicians, now that we'll have numbers, it's going to make it a lot easier. So appreciate anyone's patience who's made a profile on there and wants to learn new skills. Now, however, we have a bunch of courses on the Academy that are free right now on the Beyond Physician Academy. Create a profile. I have one, building a side gig while practicing medicine. There's other ones. There's some leadership ones, soft skills, all these skills that I feel like I did not learn in medical school or even in my medical job. Well, sometimes I did, but all these things that I feel like I had to learn in various ways, we're trying to bring those into one platform so you can learn on your own time, in your own way. Anyone else? This is your free hour, so I drink some water. We do have some new opportunities as well that are coming on, um, for certified experts for beyond physicians. So if you don't have a profile, I would make one and check out some courses, and we do have opportunities coming, and we anticipate more coming soon. Okay, thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. Yeah, what is your goal is an important thing to ask ourselves, and sometimes we don't know. I would comb it back at a high level into some of the scenarios I said in the very beginning, which is I want more time for something else outside of my career. I want more time for this. So maybe it just starts with more time. And how do I create more time for myself? And it might be decreasing the current job I have right now. And by doing that, this needs to happen either financially or responsibly or whatever happens. But I think that that makes a big difference. I think when I was starting my first venture, I was very excited about the startup world. I was already investing some of my own money into startups, and I was already thinking about how can I make money so I can decrease my hours of anesthesia to do other things. I think when I reflect on it, I was I was thinking that. So I didn't formally have this conversation with anyone, but I think that would be what I would say today. So after this seminar, the follow up will be, um, a recording of this webinar, and then more information to contribute their thought leadership to Beyond Physician. So we'll be asking you some questions. You can probably input and give feedback, etc. So we will be following up with an email. Um, how do you be thoughtful on the type of content you are broadcasting to the world? That's a great question, and I can tell you, especially with the physician hat on, I try to think of it as, going into a patient room and being thoughtful of who's there and what you say, being honest, but also being sensitive. I take that same skill set of bedside manner and put that in my content personally. I don't think everyone necessarily does it, but I do put thought into it. And in my case now, I have teenage daughters. And so I always think about their friends seeing it, which it's now happening. Sometimes some of their friends see my content and engage with it. So when you're doing things publicly, I mean, anyone can read it. It's always there. People can take screenshots. I'm very thoughtful of that. And kind of reminds me of the emotional aspects of if something gets heated. There's people that write things that just really heat you up. Just like an email, I put it in my draft section, calm down, look at it the next day, and usually change the language because I was like, what was I thinking? So I do that with content. I plug a lot of things in my notes or something, and before I put it out there, I ensure it's thoughtful. And there's a couple times where people have said things where it really offended them. And now what I've started doing is I address it. Some people will ignore it. Some people will delete the comments, assuming it's a real reaction and it's not just being obnoxious. I actually entertain it and I try to explain. And by me commenting on it, it draws more attention to it. And I'm aware of that, but I also believe in I can't be perfect and it might offend you, but this is me and I'm human and this is what I believe. So um, yeah, that's what's weird about this. There's no rules to it, but well, I think that's pretty much it. I think I'm surprised we the amount I like to talk. I got this done in time, but why doesn't everyone go back to their evenings or wherever you're at in time zone? And I appreciate everyone being here. It means a lot. I'll continue to try to add value and hopefully you receive the email and um, you know give us some input. Thank you very much, everyone.